Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming on to Inner Worlds. I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite a bit. I'm so happy that it worked out for us. How are you doing today, my love?
I'm doing good. It's the end of my day because I'm over in Europe. So I have my mocha with reishi here so that I get the
Ooh.
benefits of the caffeine, but I don't get, all
And you can sleep tonight.
exactly. Yeah.
I
Love my
love it.
reishi.
And I'm over here starting my day with my matcha. So we're having our drink together, and everyone listening is also having a comfy little drink with us.
Hopefully.
Anna, before we get into like the world of midwifery, which is what we're going to talk about a lot today, I want to know a lot more about you. I wanted to know if spirituality has always been a part of your journey.
Yes, it really has. So, I was a very sensitive, highly sensitive young girl and never felt like I really fit in. I could feel like, I felt like I was wrong. I, from a very young age, knew things. My intuition was very strong. I could see through people when they lied. I was just very, very just perceptive and sensitive and I would speak it as children do. And so that wasn't very popular amongst both adults and children, to be honest. And so I struggled when I was young. I think when we talk about the dark night of the soul kind of thing for us that we might go through at some point in our lives, that was when I was young. When I was a
Wow.
child, yeah, very young. And so I was very much seeking a place where I belonged and people that I belonged with, because I just didn't belong in school. I didn't belong in the social dynamics of girls, the school system. I was always very kind of intelligent and smart, and I did well in school. I had never had a problem in school like that. But just the dynamics, the relationship dynamics, was
We're a little
hard for
difficult.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, being a highly sensitive person and a truth teller with no filter. That was kind of me as a young girl. And so I remember, I think I was 14 when my father, who's a very kind of average Joe. My family is not spiritual or we're very different. I'm very different to my birth family, my family. But he, noticing obviously that I was different and seeking, he was like, I know a shaman. And I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor, Leeor. I was like, what? Yeah, she calls herself a witch. I was like, what? And so he had known this woman that worked in his work that openly called herself a witch. Mind you, this was maybe early 2000s or something. And he's like, I'll call her and see if she can be your mentor or something. I can't remember exactly how it
What?
came about. Yes. And
That's
so
beautiful.
I know.
Yeah.
And random, like still, I'm still gobsmacked that my dad knew a witch anyway. Because if you ever met him and talked to him, you would also be very gobsmacked that this man knew a witch. And so he connects with her, and I sit in my first women's circle led by her at the age of 14. And since then, I was very much seeking from my late teens. I was learning tarot reading, channeling, shamanic healing, different kind of healing modalities.
So
I
early.
quit school, yeah, and studied nature medicine when I was 17, turning 18 for a whole year. Herbs, making my own tinctures and pills and teas and using medicine, from nature, and learning about Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, massage therapies, just it was like a smorgasbord, which is actually a Swedish word. I don't know if you know smorgasbord, but
Yeah.
it's a Swedish word.
I love that word.
A full year of that, and then I've been as a person, highly sensitive, drawn to the alternative, spiritual, but also very much like truth and like speaking truth. And so I was always and I've always been doing both. So after that, I went into social work. I only did that for a year. And then human rights at uni. I was very much involved in NGOs and was very passionate about human rights, women's rights, minorities' rights, children's rights, just people's rights, and passionate of how the world was so dark and so without rights, right? But that made me really dark. So at the age of 21, 20 maybe, I hit the famous wall that people hit usually in their 40s, 50s. I did that then. I got totally burnt out by trying to save the world and having this, the world on my shoulders, feeling everything so deeply. And like my 24 hours a day, I was involved with, no man is illegal and immigrants and children on the verge of homelessness. And I was doing everything I could in my awake time to help people and serve people, because I'm a Virgo as well as a star sign. So full like my
the martyrs.
My passion, and also like I love being of service. It's also what brings me joy and purpose. So, but I learned there that I need to focus on what lights me up. Generator as well in human design, what lights me up, gives me energy so that I can overflow and not deplete myself like I did those years of trying to save the world, right?
You had to keep filling yourself up while giving so much to others. Yeah.
So totally. I left Sweden and I went traveling, and I ended up in Australia, which became my second home, where I was on and off for 15 years. But I kept on traveling. So, and building my knowledge base and learning. So I kept on. I became a yoga teacher in the Kundalini yoga tradition. I spent some time learning about Tantra yoga, and I did women's work in mystical dance teacher training, and I went to India and Thailand, and I worked in Venezuela for a while as a tourist guide. I was just all over the world doing all different kinds of things and just collecting wisdom. I started 2 businesses when I was 24. I started as organic day spa, doing treatments with raw food, which was very new then. I started another business, a yoga house in the middle of Sweden in the forest for a year before I left Sweden again. When I was 27, went over to New Zealand. I was teaching primarily women's work at that point. I was doing women's circles and journeys for women, diving into our rite of passage of the menarche, our first bleed, our sexuality, like loving our bodies, female anatomy, like reclaiming ourselves, our throat chakra, our intuition, our sensitivity as women, and really working on the sisterhood wound, something I had felt very deeply as a child. Feeling that sisterhood wound was something I was very passionate about. Bringing women together in a very authentic, truthful, again, truth, like really like removing the facade, removing the mask, speaking from our hearts, daring to be vulnerable, to being seen and heard, which has been throughout the ages so dangerous for us since the witch burnings, right? Since we were, being prosecuted in different times, for the last 5,000 years, it's been dangerous to be a woman. So, yes.
Wow.
And then
You're incredible.
I ended up back in Australia at 29 years old and decided to become a midwife.
A midwife, and that's how we get to the midwife journey.
That's how we get there. And the only reason I did that was because, so I was there doing women's work for half a year. I was holding these retreats and journeys, 10-week journeys with women. I was so embraced by the community in Byron Bay, where I ended up in Australia. And for the first time since I was 17, I stopped. So that been, 10 years of traveling and moving in Sweden, but also in the world, living in different places around the world. And I decided to stop, start studying, committing to that, committing to a place. I moved around in the area, but mind you, every year, but I stayed at least there for years. And the reason was because there was such a high rate of home births and natural physiological births there, which is very rare in our modern society. We don't see many natural births anymore. Definitely not in hospital. And there's a very small percentage of women that choose to birth in a birth center or home birth, and also it's not available everywhere around the world either. Some countries are better than others, like New Zealand, Holland, the UK. There's some places around the world where it's more of a higher rate of home births, and it's publicly funded, for free for women to choose, and it's supported. But then you have countries where it's absolutely not, and there's barely any home birth midwives at all.
Like the US, really.
Yeah, depending on what state you're in.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, some states are terrible, and some are better. But yeah, I know some amazing midwives though over there that are doing great work for sure.
Do you think that there's sort of a reemergence happening at all of home birthing, natural birth? Have you been noticing that?
It is, yeah. So as the world is waking up, as I'm sure you and your listeners kind of are aware of, so are women awakening to the power of birth, and that it is a rite of passage, and that she truly has shown her power through birthing babies. And as women are, reclaiming their sovereignty, as human beings are reclaiming their sovereignty, not just women, we also then wake up to, if you actually look at, especially women, we are extremely controlled and dominated when it comes to our rites of passages. So our bleed, menarche, you have the rite of passage of birth, and you have the menopause. All of it is medicated so that we become men and easily controlled. Yeah.
And assimilated to the way that society is set up now, because we don't have the space for those rites of passage anymore, right?
No.
I really would love for you.
Cycle is not honored.
Yes.
You're not honored to go in the seasons of winter, spring, summer, and autumn, which is, we can do our productivity is so high when we're in our spring, summer, that we can be resting and going inward and being in the dreaming state, being the oracle in the autumn and winter, but we're not allowed to. We're supposed to produce every day of the month,
right?
Like the sun, like the man,
right? And we're the night. We have the cycles like the moon, right? And it's so crazy that you bring that up, because I was just, as I was preparing for our talk today, I was just thinking about how, we blame the patriarchy for a lot in society, and I am of the belief that there's a lot of blame to be put on a society that's only patriarchal, right? But there's also a lot of, aspects of modern feminism that's also gotten us here. And it's almost like because we don't go through our rites of passage, which I would love for you to speak more about, we don't really know what we need as women, and so we can't really advocate for ourselves and create a world in which our spaces are, we don't need to show up like men. Actually, we need to create spaces in which we can be women, in which we can embrace our cycles. And it's not just the patriarchy, it goes hand in hand. The blame is on the toxic femininity and the toxic masculinity. And I would love to hear more about the different rites of passage, because a lot of my audience, a lot of my listeners are women. We're about 90% women over here. We have 10% beautiful, healthy, masculine men listening also. And I know that they'd love to learn about this as well. But I think that rites of passage have been, we don't see it anymore. We might see it in different religions or different indigenous cultures, but as Westerners, really, we've lost that. We've lost that in our journeys. So would you share a little bit more about different stages of life and what women go through, and how it is a rite of passage?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we go through rite of passages whether we're aware of it or not, right? So a girl will start her bleed. So that is a rite of passage. And so what a rite of passage is that it teaches us about what it is. So if you talk about the woman's now, specifically, so we talk first then about the first bleed. So what it teaches a young girl, the same with birth, the same with menopause, it teaches a woman what it is to be a woman in her culture. And so if we then look at the first rite of passage, the first bleed, what does that teach, for example, the Western woman in our countries, Sweden and the US, very similar countries, very similar cultures in a sense of how, what we do or don't do for this rite of passage. So if we look back, like just for everyone listening or watching this video now, feeling into or looking back, like, do you remember the first time you bled? Like, what was the emotion in your body? What did you feel? Most women experienced shock or shame, or it's very much surrounded by taboo. I'll tell you my first bleed story. So my first lead story, I think I was 12, so I wasn't the first one in my group of friends. I mean, that's a big deal. Were you the first one, or were you the last? That also impacts like how did you feel about that, right? So I was somewhere in between. Two of my other friends had already got it. I was sitting on the toilet. I was supposed to go to the country house with my family. Everyone was rushing around and stressed out, and we were supposed to leave, and I always needed to go to the toilet before I went anywhere, and so they were annoyed with me for being on the toilet. And I found blood as I wiped from peeing, and my first thought was, oh, here's my period, because I knew about it. I knew what it was. So I called for my mom. She peeked her head in, and I said, I got my period. And she goes, oh. So no other word than, oh. And then she closes the door, and I can hear my dad coming in the entrance and saying, what's taking so long? And my mom's like, in hushed voice, oh, Anna's got her period. And he was like, oh, me too. And then he left, not a word, right? So, and then she came in, gave me a pad. I put it on, and we left. No one spoke a word of it. So that was my, oh no, sorry, I forgot. Put a pad on, went outside to leave, and saw my two best friends. I ran over, and we did a happy dance, because I was excited that I was becoming a woman. And for us, it was a celebration. I was now a part of the gang. So that was a positive experience. My family, neutral, or, you know, I don't know, neutral. Let's say neutral. And then we get out to the country house, and my mom probably tells people there, and my auntie says to me, the only thing she says to me is like, oh, are you in pain? Do you have cramping? And I didn't. I felt nothing. It was painless. Yeah. So my introduction to my bleed was that it's, the message I got from my surroundings was that neutral, but also a bit like shameful, especially like, you know, we don't mention it, we don't talk about it.
Hush,
hush, very much. And that I was supposed to expect pain and being uncomfortable. That was the only thing. There was no celebration. There was no congratulations for becoming a woman. There was no ceremony, no ritual, nothing to mark that day. But that was my, you know, that was my initial, and that was also kind of as I went through, you know, my first bleeding years of like experiencing that. Most people talk about it as something shameful, negative. We hide our pads or tampons.
Can't wait till it's over, having accidents.
Absolutely. I mean, I really hope that people don't wear tampons anymore, knowing the toxins in there. But you know, we hide those things, the sanitary things, from, especially from men, because that's really shameful. To show them our dirty laundry, quotation marks, you know what I mean? Just showing that. And it tells us that being a woman is messy and dirty and something to hide, and
shameful.
That our vagina, our sex is dirty and something to be hiding and shameful. You shouldn't talk about that. Such stuff is behind closed doors. You hide your things, you don't talk about it, and if you do, it's in a derogatory way. So my dad would say to me as a teenager, oh, are you on your period, if I spoke back to him or something. So it's always a negative thing. Are you too emotional? Are you on your period? Why are you so emotional? Stop being so sensitive. Those things, whether I was on my period or not, it was just the thing to say if I was too much for him.
I think we've all as women experienced that for men, saying, are you on your period, if we're in a little bit of a different mood. From other women as well. That's true.
And also just talking about it, oh, you know, I'm so much pain, or poor me. And I remember, I mean, I used being on my period, getting out of gym class as well, even though I wasn't on my period. I would just say it because I had a male teacher who just went, oh, okay. And then,
and had no idea that you used the same excuse last week.
That's true.
And honestly, as you were sharing that, thank you so much for sharing your story, because it brought me back to my first bleed and made me realize how much of the reactions around it and my experience with it actually determined my teenage years and my experience as a woman. And it happened. My mom was at work and we stayed with my grandma after school every day. And I was the first. I got my menstrual cycle really early at 10 years old. And I had no idea about it. My mom hadn't talked to me about it yet. So I didn't know what was happening. And it was shocking and scary. And my mom wasn't there. And no one really talked to me about it till much later. And I realize now how much that affected my experience with my womanhood in my preteen years and teenage years. And I'm sure anybody listening right now, please take the second, like Anna was saying, and do a reflection if you can remember that first bleed and kind of understanding a little bit more about yourself and your experiences around that. Because imagine a world in which our girls and our preteens and our teenagers are taught what their menstrual cycle is and how powerful they are, and how it connects us to our ancestors and to women of all time, and the wild woman of the luteal phase, and all these different things that I didn't learn until I was in my late 20s, right? I had, and then I was put on birth control to stop, by the way, Anna, I'm sure you have a lot of, you know, a lot of women who have gone through this. I suffered from PMDD since I was 12. So for anybody listening, it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And doctors, in order to control it, put me on birth control and had me skip my period. I only got 4 periods a year. Wow. Didn't work. Suicidal ideations got worse because of it. Because instead of claiming this rite of passage, instead of learning about ourselves and having wise women teach us, well, this is what you're going through, this is what it means spiritually and energetically and physically, I was made to stop the bleeding. How crazy is that?
And control your hormones. Those crazy female hormones. They're beautiful chemical messengers. And they make us magical. That you know, blood is a river of life. It is connection to all that has ever lived and all that would ever live through our womb, like the collective consciousness of all. She is the custodian of the infinite. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's how I'm having a girl, and I don't know if I told you, but that's how I pray to raise her, to hear words like that, to have mentors like you, and I think that every woman listening right now, and men listening also, just to step into an understanding more of our natures and of these rites of passage. That's how we change the world. That's from the roots. That's grassroots. Yes, in your like family with your children, and like, you know, instead of aiming beyond, like, if you can start with your family, your community, like yourself, direct impact. Yes, absolutely. And that's the only way really we can impact others. It's through our own embodiment of it, whatever it is that we want, you know, do. And I want to speak to, you know, how it really starts there. You know, your story is just so common, right? That I would say most teenage girls never have more than a few periods today before they're put on the pill or some sort of implantation into their bodies to stop their cycle. So, and you know, for some it's the reason that they, you know, they have cramping or pain, and for some it's because their parents want to protect them, quote unquote, from getting pregnant, right? But the trade-off, I mean, they've developed a male pill, and they did a trial, and no man wanted to go through all of that because they got acne and they felt mood swings and all these things. And they didn't want that. So that's not on the market because men would never do that to themselves. But we do that to women, to young girls. And like you said, suicidal thoughts. I mean, the pill is not benign. It's not without risk. I mean, there's actual ultimate risk of blood clots and actual death for some women. It's a risk you're taking as you're taking that. And you're going, but for what? We only have actually 24 hours where we can get pregnant. The sperm can survive, right, for like 4 or 5 days. So it's a window of like 5 days, right, where you know, with natural family planning, with fertility awareness, you can understand your cycles, and you can choose then to protect yourself with other means than actually taking hormones or doing things that actually are dangerous for your body.
Right. I'm embarrassed to say, Anna, that I actually didn't know that until my late 20s. That's how little understanding, of all this was. That's a really beautiful covering, a short summary of the first rite of passage. Would you want to share the other two?
Well, it very much just, you know, it just continues. Like if we're looking at how we're celebrating, quotation mark, because it's not really, but you know, the rite of passage of birth is that, again, it's the event itself it's so, I don't even know where to start. It's so managed, controlled. There's such a domination over women. As a woman gets pregnant in our maternity system today, she's very much infantilized, and all the testing that's done, right, in pregnancy is all about protecting the baby from the dangers of the mother. We have to measure and control and take blood tests and do the testing and do the ultrasounds and do all this, because you might just off your baby at any time. You're a dangerous vessel, instead of what is the truth, which is that you are divinely designed to carry this beautiful soul and to birth that as well, that beautiful soul. And very rarely, when a woman is healthy and when physiology is upheld and she is lovingly supported, not just her physical manifestation, her body, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, when she is fully supported, then the outcomes are great. And that is something we can see. Evidence shows that clearly, that continuity of care with a midwife, a known midwife that she trusts, the outcomes for baby and mom are superior. And not only physically, like life, we talk life and, you know, mother and baby's life, but like the satisfaction on all levels, again, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, culturally, it's just through the roof compared to what women report going through the hospital system, for example.
Right.
Yeah, because there you're pathologized. They're calling you low risk or high risk. They're not calling you healthy. They're calling you low risk. They're just waiting for you to become high risk.
Never thought about that. That's insane.
The language. Listen to their language. Most women that birth in the US today and other Western countries, they get the label failure to progress. Her body failed to progress, so we went for a cesarean. Her body failed to progress, so we went for a forceps or vacuum delivery. Your body failed. We had to save your baby from your failing body. That is the message that most women are getting in our society today. And so if we're talking about a rite of passage, right? So you're going through this massive rite of passage of becoming a mother, especially the first time, going from maiden to mother. And the message you're getting, if you're looking at the population at large, most women get labeled failure to progress. She failed her rite of passage. She failed being a woman. She failed birthing her baby. We're then going through into motherhood feeling like failures, and we then don't trust ourselves to be the mother we need to be for that baby. So we outsource that too. We outsource it to pediatricians, to nurses, to schools, and so on and so forth. It's a continuation of outsourcing our power, because at our most vulnerable but also our most powerful time in our lives, birthing babies, we are being failed by the system that is supposed to protect and love us and care for us.
I'm about to cry. I felt that so deeply, especially a lot of my friends right now are having their first and second babies, and I'm thinking back to stories where, you know, some of them may have wanted to have a more unmedicated or what they think is of as a normal birth, which I think at least in my area over here, a normal birth is induction and epidural, and that's in their minds, and they ended up with a C-section that they weren't planning for, that they didn't want. And I'm thinking back to some of these people and how they've kind of withdrawn into themselves after the birth instead of flourished from it. And that's who came to my mind and to my heart as you were saying that, because instead of feeling empowered by their experience, it almost traumatized them. And I know a lot of women, I hear a lot of women's stories about being traumatized by their births. Yes. And I'm wondering, Anna, do you think that there is a way to have an empowering hospital birth?
I want to be really honest and truthful
Yes.
with you, because I've worked in all of the places. I've worked in the big tertiary hospital, I've worked in the little country hospital, I've worked in a birth center, I've worked as a home birth midwife. And if you want to have a natural physiological birth, then your chances of having that is so much higher if you have a home birth or a birth center birth with independent midwife that is not connected to a hospital. I have walked in with women to hospitals as their sacred birth worker, their birth advocate, and protected them, because that's what needs to happen in a hospital. You need to protect the space and also protect the woman from a lot of the interventions, the routine interventions, and their policies and guidelines that are not rooted in evidence, but is very strangely still upheld, even though there's no evidence around it, even though we can see that it's causing harm to women and babies, it's still happening. And so if you bring with you a kick-ass birth advocate, I mean, I have some beautiful graduates from my Sacred Birth Worker mentorship around the US. You can connect with me if you want to see if someone lives in your state. But like, find someone, because that's the thing. Doulas are great, but a lot of doulas today, especially if you're certified towards the DONA training or whatever, they are not birth advocates. They walk in with a woman and they might do some nice massage or acupressure points and be very lovely, but they are kind of, they're gagged because of their certification. They're saying, oh, it's not my scope of practice to argue with the doctors or the midwives or the nurses. And so they won't protect you from when there's unevidence-based intervention suggestions, such as inductions, for example. I mean, that there is an induction epidemic happening right now where it's going down and down in gestation, where babies are being evicted from the womb way too early. They should not be. Like, those last few days and weeks when they could have stayed in the womb is when there's so much going on every day with their neurodevelopment, and they're putting on more fat, which is a good thing to cope with the first few days after labor when they drop their body weight before the milk comes in. All of this, like, is so important. And when you evict a baby too early, first and foremost, the baby's not ready and your body's not ready. So your chance of failure of success is very high. If you're inducing a woman like without any sign of labor, the chances of having a failed induction is very high.
I think that, Anna, I think that people really don't know about this. Like, I'm ashamed to admit, I'm not ashamed. This is just, how society is set up. And I wish that we all had this education. But until I became pregnant and I started doing all the research, I didn't understand all the interventions that happen at a hospital and the complications and what even a natural birth is. I knew no epidural. That's about as far as my knowledge went. And if there are women out here listening who want to really experience birth as a rite of passage, how would you guide them? Where could they start if they have none of this information?
Where can they start? Well, I think you're right that most people just assume that the safest place to birth is in the hospital. And it's a big leap to even consider something else. So I would start there. I have a free ebook that I can send you the link to, where I detail all the routine hospital procedures, from the simplest things of like measuring your belly, like all the things, to like the big ones of like putting a IV, in your hand, or giving you Pitocin, all these things. And I just state like the benefits, the risks, the alternatives to all of them, so that you can start having some sort of an idea. And even just reading that also will open your eyes. And I wrote that it's actually not for the US woman, it's for the world. In the US, it's even more than what's in that book. There's even more stuff happening there.
More interventions.
But that's the basics of what happens in most Western countries. But there's even more stuff. And so, start there, read that, and just get an idea of, okay, this is what it looks like in hospital. How does my body feel? because I work a lot with women. I mean, they're welcome to come to me and have a one-on-one session. I can, because it's very individual as well, where you start with this question, like rite of passage. Some are already far ahead, know they're going to have a home birth, or, or they going to have a birth center birth, or they've read all the books, or they've done all these things, or they have worked on their, also, I want to say this, that I mean, it's so big. Our conversation can go for hours.
And I want to talk to you for hours, just so you know.
Yeah. But birth is so much. It's the biggest thing you need to do is reprogram your subconscious mind, because as modern women, we fear birth. We have been programmed through media for a very long time. Every movie we've ever seen, any series we've ever seen, women scream. Their waters break. It is panic from everybody. What should I do? Like, women are infantilized in the stories too.
Out of control.
I don't know what to do. Oh my God, there's something happening. And then she's rushed to the hospital. The doctors save her. She's on her back. She's screaming. She's sweating. The man is fainting. And this is how we can laugh about it, but because we've seen it, it's also what we believe. So women will go in and lie on the bed voluntarily, because that's what they've been programmed to do. I'm gonna birth baby, I'll just lie on the bed, on my back on the bed. Like, no primal woman would ever do that.
Birth is more of an active thing rather than a passive thing happening to you, right?
Absolutely.
You're involved
you
in it
your
naturally.
Baby. And your baby is birthing itself. It's a birth dance between the mom and the baby.
Collaboration.
Yeah, so the baby's birthing itself. So it's like, so when you're birthing, well, the preparation is huge, especially if you're starting from scratch and you haven't done kind of this before. Reprogramming the subconscious mind is one of the absolute most important things. That's why I started the Natural Birth podcast, where I feature women sharing their natural, empowering births in hospital, birth center, at home, and in free births every Sunday, so that women can listen to hundreds of birth stories. And many do that. I get emails every day about how they listen to absolutely every story till like 4 years back during their pregnancy, just programming their minds.
My sister-in-law, who had a natural home birth, was listening to your podcast and would say, and she reprogrammed. She didn't do any other prep, really. She didn't read or anything. She just listened to your positive birth stories, and that was so helpful for her. It's really reprogramming the mind.
Yes, it is. And it's shutting out anything you don't want.
Yes.
Don't watch those those series or those movies where it's that kind of birth. Don't look at the YouTube videos with those births. Only look at what you want. Program your mind. So important.
I had a question about that. So I'm a huge advocate about priming our subconscious mind and really only taking in the information that we want to see happen in our outer reality. And I think I'm going through my own little initiation. Well, I know I'm going through a lot of initiations through this pregnancy. One of them is that I kind of have a hard time speaking for myself and advocating for myself. And I had one of my husband's friends come up to me and just share a really scary birth story, and I kind of told her, I don't really want to hear this, and she's like, no, you need to hear this. And I think that a lot of people are well-meaning in that they're like, you need to know what could possibly happen. How do you feel about that, Anna? Like, do we need to hear any complication stories so that we know what to do? How would you go about that?
No. And the thing is, I absolutely understand. And it's coming from, when she says, well, you need to know this, it's coming from care. It's coming from wanting to save you from that. But telling you that story doesn't save you from that. And so, no, I would just focus on fully when you're pregnant. When you're not pregnant, if your listeners are thinking of conceiving, now is the time to see both sides. Now is the time to do your research. Now is the time to prep. When you become pregnant, you, like, the veils between the worlds are very thin. You're very susceptible. You're like a sponge.
Oh, yes.
You're so highly sensitive and highly intuitive. But very susceptible. And so you want to keep yourself far away. And cultures around the world have always known this. to protect the pregnant woman is to protect the baby, because the baby not only absorbs what you eat and drink, it absorbs your emotional state. It absorbs everything that you're feeling and going through. And so a pregnant woman needs to be protected from, all the conflicts and all the negativity that is around her. To the best of everyone's ability. Don't bring that to the pregnant woman, because you're also bringing it to the baby. And we really want to protect our space and our energy when we're pregnant. So important.
Absolutely.
And so I would say no thank you. But I understand, it's hard. And especially, again, as women, our throat chakra is very blocked.
I'm working on it. Been drawn to a lot of blue lately.
I love that.
But the advocating for ourselves. And I have to step into it, because if I don't do it for myself now, who will do it for my baby?
Yeah. And you are doing it for your baby right now. Because you and your baby are one. Mama Toto. You and your baby are one, and you will share the same auric field until your baby's 2 years. Your baby will believe that it is your body. You are one until they're 2 years old.
Oh, that's beautiful. I didn't know that. The same auric field.
It's so important that we honor mama-baby dyad until at least 2 years of age. Dads protect the mama-baba dyad. Yeah, we have this world right now where women and men are supposed to be equals in everything, and so many are working towards, also when the baby's a really little baby, for that baby to be 50-50 mama and daddy. And that's just not right for the baby. The baby believes it is you.
Wow.
And your breasts and your heartbeat and your smell and all of that, you're the most important in the beginning. Dad too, but that's secondary, and he has to be.
Yeah.
If you're with a man, obviously, but the partner, is not equal in the beginning. Mother is the safety on all levels. Again, all levels: physically, survival, but emotionally, mentally, neurodevelopment. The baby, being on the mother, skin to skin for long time. As soon as you can be skin to skin with your baby, even if they're 6 months old, be skin to skin with your baby. Immunity wise, everything, it's just so important.
I'm really taking that in, and that really landed, Anna. Thank you for sharing that so much. I'm curious more about how you've seen with all the women because you are so uniquely qualified to speak about the woman's journey from all your experience. It's mind-boggling. How have you seen women changing through their childbirth experience, maybe through their natural childbirth experience?
I mean, it's awe-inspiring. I mean, when and especially, I mean, it's such a difference from a physiological natural birth, especially in the home where a woman is in her own domain. She's the queen of her domain. One of the most important things when you birth a baby is to feel safe, not just physically safe. So most people go that's the hospital. Not just physically safe, emotionally safe, spiritually safe, mentally safe. The people you invite to your birth space should be people that you feel extremely, extremely safe with on all levels. Absolutely. That you can trust. And that you feel loved by, actually. We want the oxytocin to flow. Oxytocin is the love hormone. And so what I see with women birthing at home and also birthing in birth centers that are freestanding, where they also have this really deep connection with their midwives and the team that's working there, and they feel really that safety, like a home away from home. It's just the hormones working optimally, she moving through this rite of passage, these, we can talk about the birth journey, but that would be another podcast, I think. Yeah. I mean, it's so deep, that journey. When you go through the transition phase of the crisis of confidence, where you are maybe catapulted out with adrenaline, looking outside of yourself for safety, for help, for guidance, and you're having then your loving husband, your loving midwife looking at you saying, all is normal, you're doing this, and you can go back in and you can meet what you need to meet, and you go through that rite. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And that is why when you come out of it, you can do anything. And that is a dangerous woman. And that is why it's so controlled. Because dangerous women they change the world.
Oh, yeah. Empowered, confident, dangerous women who know what they're capable of and what their bodies can do and what they can do on their own when they're in a safe and supported place. Wow, that's beautiful. That was a gorgeous answer, my love.
And you know, I see that, you know, so I'll just tell a small snippet.
Yeah,
so when a
please.
woman has a physiological natural birth, when she lets her hormones do the work for her, she has the love hormone that causes the contractions, right? Then she has her own kind of natural opioids, the beta endorphin, that is the pain relieving hormone that's building in her body at the same time as the oxytocin is increasing, because it's a kind of feedback loop. So she starts maybe slow off in labor and then it intensifies. The same with the beta endorphins. They increase in power to also help you cope with the sensations of labor, right? Your natural pain relief system. When you are at the peak is when you birth your baby, right? The peak of oxytocin, the peak of beta endorphins. The oxytocin is like causing this massive force of energy just birthing through you, like you involuntarily birth your baby. It's like vomiting with your vagina. You just kind of, like, it's involuntary. You don't have to push. Your body will do that. You just have to be the channel opening up and allowing the force to come through you. At the same time, you peak in oxytocin, you peak in beta endorphins, which catapults you into this euphoric state. So at the peak of birth, women just experience an orgasm, having, like, birthing your baby. The levels of oxytocin, it's like 1,000 orgasms. It's so powerful. And so if you've ever had a really deep orgasm where you feel like you're in one with the universe and you're just feeling like all this love and expansion, heart opening, that times 1,000 at birth, right? Plus the euphoric feelings of the beta endorphins. So women birthing babies naturally, especially in their homes, I would say 90% of them scream. They scream afterwards, I want to do that again. This was the best thing I've ever done. I want to be pregnant again. I want to do this again.
Oh, wow.
And you barely ever hear that from a woman in hospital.
Oh, no way. Even my friends who have done unmedicated in the hospital are like very scared for the next ones. So, wow, that just gave me chills. I have tears in my eyes. That is so beautiful, Anna. I see a lot of parallels also with the birth. And I think I would love to have you on again to do a whole episode on the birth journey, because I see so many parallels of my ayahuasca journeys and birth journeys. The length of time and everything, and the contractions and the expansions. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. But I would love to close out our loop. I think our conversation took a life of its own, which I love that it did that. I would love to close out the loop of the rites of passage for women, and maybe ending with the last one. Is it the last one, or are there a couple more?
Well, I mean, the first one for both men and women is your own birth and your own death, right? So within life as a woman, we have the three ones: the menarche, the birth, and the menopause. Yeah. So, I mean, to really close and just do a very quick one, the menopause is when I'll say this. So see if I can remember. It's a Native American proverb, I'm pretty sure. That says something around, along the lines of, when a woman has her first bleed, she starts to practice her power. When she births, she's being shown her power, like she's embodying that power. And then when she goes through menopause, she becomes her power.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that a lot of women are really afraid of what comes after the mother stage. And I personally am so excited for my wise woman, my wise woman stage. I think that it is really exactly what you were saying, and the integration of everything else and becoming the teacher at that point of all those experiences.
And we need the Maga. We need the Maga, the magical elder woman who has embodied her power, who's gone through the rites already, who's gone through the life of a woman. She needs to step in to be the leader now. We don't need maidens to be leaders. Maidens are amazing, and they're very attractive and magnetic, and they're there, and there's so many maidens speaking out in the world. And she's also the one that is being valued in this society that very much values youth. But who holds the true power? It is the Maga, it's the elder woman, when she stepped into it. Now, we also have a lot of women who are in the age of the Maga that is not embodying the magical woman that is in her power, right?
Yes.
One thing I'll say to that, which I love about going through menopause, is that as we have our first bleed, this veil of estrogen comes over us, which is the agreeableness, the nice girl, the one who feels into everyone, who cares for everyone, the mothering, in a sense, energy of like mothering the world, mothering others, caring. When you go through menopause, that veil is taken off. And so what really happens is that, because there's a lot of negativity around the crone, the Maga, the older woman who's all of a sudden she divorces her husband, she turns, she dyes her hair blue, she's walking around, she's this free woman, right? Yeah. It's because she doesn't give a fuck anymore. Yeah. Because that estrogen level veil has been lifted. She's now actually operating. She's actually operating more like a man.
Yeah.
Which is not liked by the men, right?
Right.
It's not liked by society. Oh, this woman is speaking her mind. Oh, this woman is claiming her space. Oh, this woman is no longer putting up with, again, let's face it, that generation that we now have, if we look at the women now that's in that mind period, those men might not always have been, the nicest man potentially in that relationship, right? And now she's not putting up with that anymore. She's leaving him. Yeah. She's not going to coddle him or mother him anymore.
Wow.
And this is what's happening now, though, with us women in our generation, is that more and more of us are waking up and we're not seeking those relationships of codependence and where the man is acting like a child or, the woman is mothering, because that is a lot more so in the older generations.
Yes.
Which the women are going,
more are equals. And
yes. Yeah. And someone who's in their mature masculine, right? And
absolutely.
That also demands you to be obviously in your mature feminine and to
absolutely
to be
I think the term also, by the way, Anna, I don't know if somebody listening doesn't know what the Maga term is. I think I've heard it's not the crone, right? It's before crone, kind of.
Exactly. Because again, we live longer now as well. Yes. And so, as you step into the Maga, you might be in your 50s, 60s, and you step into a crone, you're more maybe in your 70s or older. So that's more, you're more in the wise woman stage of closer to.
Yes.
You could see it as, maiden, mother, Maga, crone. You can see the seasons, just as in our cycle.
Oh, wow,
or in
beautiful.
Weather, right? Maiden, spring, mother, summer, Maga, autumn, and crone is winter.
Oh, wow. And it's also the lunar cycle too, right? Yes. When we wax and wane. God, the parallels of the female journey in nature is just gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Yes, because we are nature and all traditions around the world. And if you look at the ones that are still practicing, so the more nature-based religions, it's all about this, the knowledge about the cycle, the woman, nature, moon, sun, earth. It's all connected. And this is a part of what I teach about as well in my birthwork and mentorship. It's so important to know about this as you're working with women.
Before we close up, I have a couple questions for my listeners for you, if you're open to that.
Sure.
Because we went a different direction, and I love the direction that we went in. So I'm embracing it. You'll have to come back. I know they'll all want you to come back. The question that we got, one of them that I really like them, is what has birth work taught you about how to live your life?
You know what? It's deepened my practice in being present with life.
I love that.
Because when you attend births, time stands still. Birth doesn't have a timeline, except if you're in a hospital and they push Pitocin and force you into timeline, but not naturally. Mm-hmm. So you're in this space of like everything and nothingness at the same time. And as a space holder, I practice becoming the channel between the heavens and the earth. So I clear my mind, I empty my mind, I enter into heart consciousness, womb consciousness, and I just am. And so it's a beautiful practice for 10, 12, 18, 24 hours or longer, where I am mindless and just very full of beingness. And it teaches me to be more that in my life, but it's definitely not a place I always dwell in as you move through life. And
of course,
you know, but that is the gift of birth work as a birth witness and space holder of birth, is that you have this opportunity to sit in deep meditative state with the life force energy in front of you, with the wild woman in front of you, and you being that pillar of light and anchor and safety. And so that is why I'm very passionate about mentoring birth workers to hone in on this skill and be good at that, because that is sorely lacking by most birth workers in our modern society today, that skill of being. Just
that is so beautiful, such a beautiful answer. So it taught you about presence and beingness in your daily life, and you can draw on those experiences when you need to. So just one more. How would someone know if birth work is their calling? I know that you work with women to become sacred birth workers. How would somebody know if this is something that they should be doing?
It is a calling. They would know. It would light them up. There would be this like stirring in their heart and soul. They would look at birth videos and cry. They would want to listen to birth stories every day. Birth work is like being a midwife, and I don't mean the midwife of today, the medical midwife going through uni. I mean, I did that journey of, I went to uni, but I also did apprenticeship, and like the traditional, like a midwife traditionally, midwife is one of the oldest words in the, and oldest professions a woman ever has held. And it used to be womb to tomb. It would be to be a people's rite of passages as they enter the world and leave the world. She was the healing woman of the tribe, the community. People would come to her for healing as well, for herbs, for knowledge beyond the physical. And so it's a deep calling. I feel like women who have been midwives in previous lives are just constantly called back to that profession.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so to answer that question, I believe that if there's a stirring in your soul.
You would hear this conversation and you'd be like, I need more of this. And honestly, Hannah, this is kind of one of the reasons, other than wanting to talk about, on this season of my podcast, we're talking about death and life and rebirth. And so I had to have a midwife, and a midwitch come on and talk about bringing in life. And we started talking about the cycles of that women live and how we live throughout our lives. And I have a lot of younger women who listen to my podcast, and something intuitively tells me that more women need to consider this as their calling and their work. And I wanted to bring you to my community to give a resource for a lot of these women who are maybe looking for something, because I think there's an archetype. I think I am one of the archetype. I feel like we both are, where it's like you're really highly sensitive, especially as a child. You're really intuitive, especially as a child. You kind of block it out. A lot of people block it out. I blocked it out. It doesn't seem like you did, Anna. You kind of just went through life feeling that, but I blocked it out. Yeah, you couldn't, exactly. And this archetype is we are drawn to herbs, into plant medicine, into the natural way of things, into energy work, and into healing, into yoga, and into meditation, and into all this. There's an archetype there, and we have kind of, we're waking up, we're coming back, but we're still forging our space again in society. It's like we lost our space there. And I want to create that space again. And you're creating that space with the work that you do with birth workers. And so, I wanted people to have this resource. So how can people work with you?
Yes, so I have the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship. The next mentorship round starts on the 26th of August. I'm not sure if this will come out before then, but that's the next round, and it goes for a year. So it's a half a year kind of intensive mentorship portal where I teach. I do one-on-one sessions each month with you. There's 3 live classes where we meet in master classes. There is so much richness in the online portal with so much information. We work a lot on both the self-development and inner work, everything from throat, relationship to authority, sexuality, our own rites of passages, red thread lineage, birth imprints, her story. We work through epigenetics and birth trauma and gifts. We work through like nature, and the cycles of nature and how we are nature, and it's our teacher and healer and guide and space holder. We go through into our intuition. Obviously, all of this is so important as we work with women.
Yeah.
And then we go into conception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and medicalized birth as well, to know how to be the sacred birth advocate within that realm as well. So it's a very holistic, comprehensive, and big training. Way, way beyond any kind of other birth record training out there. It's a very unique program that doesn't really exist anywhere else. With this
that's
kind
beautiful.
Of spiritual and focus on the sacred and self-development in the realm of birth and birth work. But I also work one-on-one with women all over the world. Yeah. I coach women who are pregnant or who are working through birth trauma, which is so often, the case. 1 in 3 women have birth trauma, as we know. I think there's a big, dark number too that we don't know, but that's what we know in the system. We have 1 in 3 women walking out of hospitals and birthing with birth trauma. 1 in 20 with PTSD from birth. Yeah. So a lot of women come to me to share about their birth stories and start the healing process of integrating and ultimately realizing, because every woman who comes to me has internalized shame. The system has taught her that she failed in some way, shape, or form. And so my job is to hear her story, acknowledge what happened, and actually share with her, from my understanding as a midwife, where she was failed by the system and by the midwife or the doctor, and not how her body failed her. So I work a lot with birth trauma healing. And then I have the natural birth course and the nourishing postpartum course that pregnant women take to prepare to optimize their chances of having a natural and empowering birth experience and nourishing postpartum as well.
And everyone can find that at Sacred Birth International, right?
That's it. sacredbirthinternational.com, exactly.
And I'll have it linked in the description. And where can they find you? Social media or anywhere else?
Yes, social media. You can find me as the Spiritual Midwitch. At least so far. I might change to Sacred Birth International at one point, but right now, the Spiritual Midwitch. And the Natural Birth podcast has its own Instagram as well, if they're curious about.
Beautiful. And of course there's the Natural Birth podcast that everyone can start listening to positive birth stories over there. I'll link that down below as well. Anna, thank you so much. This was such a beautiful, nourishing conversation. Thank you for your time, my love. Is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
I wish you so much joy and blessings for continuing this pregnancy in harmony with you and your baby and your family unit and the divine. And all my blessings for a beautiful birth journey as well.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for everybody who listened to us. I'll have all of Anna's information in the description for you, for the podcast and the YouTube. And I love you guys. And as always, remember to honor the beautiful universe inside of you.